Hey guys, welcome back to Piston Malaysia. Today we have with us the new Volkswagen Golf GTI Mark 8. In this video, we want to tell you whether the Golf GTI has grown up to be a decent family car. It costs about 212,000 ringgit, which is quite a bit of money, but it's also a very fun car to drive, so to speak. I'll explain more on that later. If you're in the market for a car that costs somewhere around that region and yet you want something that is fun to drive, yet is spacious enough to bring your family away on a weekend getaway, then this video is for you, because if you're going to take out that much money, you better be buying a good car that checks all those boxes. Otherwise, you'll probably get a good beating from your wife. So in this video, like I said, you're going to find out whether the Golf GTI has grown up to be a fun-loving family car. Let's start with the engine, because this engine is still it's an integral part of the GTI experience, so to speak. It produces about 240 PS and 317 Newton meters of torque, which is quite decent. And yet again, actually, the full tank of RON 95 will give you a range of 610 kilometers, which again is quite impressive. But that's until you hit the open roads and you put your foot down, and you'll notice that the range is actually dwindling down to a little over 400 kilometers in a matter of minutes, because the Golf GTI is quite a fun-loving car. But is it as fun as before? Let's find out. In terms of design though, there's no mistaking this for anything else but a Golf GTI. Still the design language is an obvious evolution from the Mark 6, the Mark 7, the 7.5 and now the 8. However, these drooping headlights are a love it or hate it design. And then there's of course the light strip that crosses the front, connects the two headlights in a monobrow sort of fashion. So that is also another love it or hate it, but that has become an integral part of the Volkswagen design language, because you see it in all the cars from the Arteon to the Tiguan. And then at the bottom here, of course, there's too much plastic for my liking. But when you come to the side, now this is where it starts to get very handsome. You get 18-inch wheels wrapped in Bridgestone tires. Of course, you get that iconic GTI badging up front here. Then, my favorite though, is the back of the car. A lot of GTI enthusiasts apparently have been making some noise because they prefer the GTI badging at the side. But hey, it looks good, it's bigger now. So in case anybody is wondering what just blasted past them, that's a good indication. The back, still a very handsome part of the car. The new Volkswagen seats, the GTI seats are actually great. They look great. They're also seriously comfortable. They're huge. They're ventilated as well as heated. But because of the size, it creates a very claustrophobic experience for the rear passengers, which I'll demonstrate shortly. But I also think it's a bit of a shame that only the driver gets memory and electronic seats, where else the passenger still gets all these manual seats, which for a car that costs 212,000 ringgit, I think it's a bit of a pity. Now let me show you what the rear passengers actually their experience because of the size of the seat. I think I don't quite like it, but let's see. Now, because of the size of the seats, my forward visibility is down to 0. For me to look in front, I have to do this, which is, I don't know. I think a different seat design would have been better, because it creates a very claustrophobic experience at the back here. And since we are at the back here, you get 2 Type-C USB chargers, and you get your own air conditioning settings with air conditioning vents. Let's see what else you get. And cup holders with a tiny latch over here that lets you access the boot in case you want to get anything while the car is moving. So yeah, tight, claustrophobic, but then it's a Golf GTI. It's all about the driving experience now, isn't it? There's one thing about the interior of the Mark 8 Golf GTI, is just how simple it is, because almost all of the controls are actually now placed in this touchscreen system here, which gives you access to everything like air conditioning settings, all your vehicle settings, all your everything, even your drive mode settings, everything is placed in here. This is not actually a very good thing actually. Oh, by the way, you also get wireless Apple CarPlay, which is great. I really appreciate this. But anyway, on the point of having almost all the controls inside here, I don't think it's very intuitive. Having driven this car for quite a couple of days already, and you know, especially on the highway. For example, let me demonstrate how you adjust the air conditioning settings. First, you press on this climber button here, and then this is how you adjust the blower settings. Now imagine trying to do this while you're driving, because this is actually a two-step process. That previously there's just one button, so you just have to reach out to the button and adjust it, right? Well, now it's a two-step process. You have to press the climber button, and then you have to, you know, adjust the air conditioning as you like. And while you're driving on the highway and you're being bounced around, the chances of you accidentally pressing on a button that you don't want to is actually quite high. I've done it so many times. It's actually very irritating. So that's a bit of a bummer actually, and I thought that Volkswagen would have thought of a better way to simplify it. Yes, the interior looks nice and simple, but you know, there's some things that should be easily accessible. For example, the new Lexus NX 350, they have something similar as well. But then the Lexus design, what they tried to do is that the integral buttons such as air conditioning settings, temperature settings, and all of the important commands are actually still accessible through physical buttons, because that's just safer, it's more intuitive, it's just much better. But in here though, yeah. Anyway, with all these edges over here, this is a perfect spot for dust and such to hide away. You get a charge pad over here, so this only works if you don't have your phone cover on it, so you just place your phone here and it will automatically charge, and then you can cover it this way so it doesn't fly around. But then this only works if you are using the wireless charge pad. If you're having your phone plugged in, there's actually no place for you to place your phone. Other than that though, like I said, this 10-inch screen gives you access to all of the important commands, entertainment, air conditioning, vehicle controls. And then this 10.25-inch screen over here, well, this is of course your meter panel, and then you can adjust how and what type of information that you want to see over here. And this is actually quite fun, your destination info, so then you can also change it again. So it has multiple modes, which I quite like, because it's refreshing to always be able to change what type of data that is being sent back to you. So that's nice. And then of course, in typical Volkswagen flavor, everything up here in the interior is haptic control. Everything is haptic buttons. So for example, if you're playing your music and you want to adjust your volume, you do this. This is how you adjust your volume. Or you can simply press it. You no longer can press it actually, but you need to slide your finger, which is a little irritating. And then if you want to adjust your temperature, you slide it again. So yeah, and otherwise you can also control it from here. This is your volume settings, and over here you can actually press it. And then likewise, everything is adjusted through these steering mounted buttons, haptic buttons over here. I hope that in the next generation Volkswagen cars we lose these haptic buttons, because they're just not very intuitive to use, and this piano black just irritates the OCD in me. This steering mounted pedal shifters, always welcome. And to the right of me, the haptic button theme continues. These over here is your light settings. So this turns on your headlights, this turns on your side lights, everything, and this is how you go into auto. If you want to turn on your fog lamps, it's over here. Yeah, so everything is here. This is not too bad because it's clearly marked out, but it's still haptic and it's still piano black, and it still will collect all your fingerprints and the dust as well. So yeah, not so good. Now let's take it for a drive and see how it feels. So to find out whether the Volkswagen Golf GTI can be a proper family car, I took my family for a weekend getaway to visit my cousins in Kuantan. So I packed my mom in there, I packed my wife as well as my son. I'm going to show you whether they're comfortable and whether we could get everything, all of their luggage in there properly. So let's check it out. So everybody's in there. I'm going to get to them shortly. Let's first check out the boot space. So this is 4 people's luggage. We have a stroller, we have my computer bags, we have the weekend getaway stuff, everything. As you can see, everything is densely packed in there. I don't think we can accommodate any more bags. That's already cutting it very tight. My son is passed out. I hope I don't wake him up. So he's passed out. But as you can see, he too is quite tight. There's no more space over there for him, right? And he's not even 2 years old yet. Now we're going to surprise my mom. She doesn't look very comfortable. My wife, yeah. So if your family is small size, then perhaps yes. But if you're Punjabi sized like us, then there's only enough space for 4 of us in the Volkswagen Golf GTI. Enough for maybe 2 or 3 days worth of luggage, but not much more. But then there's always Tule to help you with the roof rack and luggage boxes. So yeah, it's almost there, but not quite. Still plenty of fun though, as I'll show you after this. And the other thing that gets to me about the new Volkswagen Golf GTI Mk 8 as to why it's not a really good family car is because at highway speed it can get really noisy in here, irritatingly noisy actually. Of course, you know, this is considered quite normal. After all, we are running Bridgestone 18-inch Bridgestone tires, you know, they're low profile. So in the interest of weight, there's probably not a lot of you know, sound deadening material in here. This is, after all, a performance car. But the purpose of this video is still to find out whether or not the Golf GTI has matured to be a family car. But on the highway, even though, you know, the 370 Newton meters of torque brings you up to speed quite well. But in the interest of a family car, I think it's still got a long way to go. But having said that, is it a fun driver's car? Let's find out. That's the fun part. Now let's find out. So in terms of driving fun, let's not forget that the entire Volkswagen Golf GTI persona actually started with the ability of being fun to drive as well as, you know, being able to tour. That's what GTI stands for, right? Grand Touring Injection. So of course the injection part is no longer relevant, but Grand Touring still is. So is it still fun to drive? Of course it's still fun to drive. It's still, after all, a GTI. But I have to say this, that perhaps because now there's the Golf R, that the GTI has probably been watered down a little. Because of course you get different driving modes, but even in the sport driving mode, it's still very much on the softer side. You know, I don't like the fact that in auto mode, I really have to put my foot down for the gearbox to actually realize that, hey, this guy is asking for a downshift. You know, it should be sharper than that, it should be quicker than that. Of course, gear shifts are quick, it's a 7-speed DSG after all. But I think it needs to be a little bit more intuitive. So how do you counter that? You counter that by using the steering mounted pedal shifters, of course. And that way, there's never that lag that I was telling you about. And in that way, you know exactly in which gear you want to be even before you reach that spot. Downshifting, no issues. And I really like the sounds that it makes. It sounds really good, this 2-liter turbocharged engine. Now, right now, I want to put the foot down. 4th gear. I hope you can hear this. The tire sound is really noisy in here. Sounds good. There's no doubt that it still has that fun-loving personality that Golf GTIs are so well known for. But it's just, as I said, a little softer now, so to speak. Of course, that's not to mean that it does not have the ability. It still has that electronic chassis control, dynamic chassis control. It still has an XDF, electronic limited slip differential, that helps you counter understeer. There's all sorts of electronic talent on board that make the Golf GTI quite fun, especially in long sweeping corners. In tighter corners, this is still a very heavy car, so you do tend to feel the weight, and it's still ultimately a front wheel drive. But you know, in situations such as this, God, I hope you can hear that. Okay. Fast right-hander right now. It feels planted, the road's bumpy, and the chassis is set to sport, so you do tend to feel everything. It still will increase your BPM, and it still will put a smile on your face, but I still think that the Mark 7, the Mark 7.5, or even the Mark 6 were a little bit more engaging than this new Mark 8. Those really, when you put it in sport, they're really in sport. But now though, sport means faster shifts, a heavier steering wheel, but the gearbox still tends to lag. So that's that about the Volkswagen Golf GTI. Is it a proper family car? Well, if you have a small family and they don't mind the noise and all the trashing around on the highway, then it's not too bad. But for my family, well, we found it a little uncomfortable. Well, like I said, if your family is up for it, then of course it can. The boot space is quite decent if you don't have a stroller in there. As a fun-loving car, of course, I think it's not as fun as previous generation GTIs. It's a little bit watered down, but to solve that problem, there's of course the Golf R. So what do I think about the new Mark 8 Volkswagen Golf GTI? Well, it's obviously matured, but has everything that matures. It has sort of dwindled down a little bit. It's not as sharp as it was before. It's not as fun-loving as it was before, but it's still quite fast and it's still quite fun in the corners. If you've had your attention up to this point, do consider subscribing now to our channel. Thank you for watching. I'm Keshy Dhillon.